HaLashon class. I hope those of you who have made it here have survived that terrible Verizon outage that we had or have been currently experiencing. Baruch Hashem, there's always lots of different ways to connect the internet. I know I've had my share of internet problems, but we are still in book 2. We are still chugging along in chapter 24 as we head to the end of Shmiras HaLashon, at the end of which we will celebrate by saying nothing bad about others. A good way to celebrate such an occasion and such a work. Today we're going to talk about, so this is a really interesting and important topic we're going to discuss today in book 2, chapter 24. This chapter, it says, even someone who was, it says, lakui b'shmiras piv, chelik gadol. Okay? So even though he was smitten in guarding his mouth for a long time, okay? Chelik gadol, mimei chayav, a large portion of his life, okay? Right? The idea is that you have been, what we would call this a mumar, someone who has apostated or has felt a lack of belief in a section of Torah. All right, this is interesting. I have not personally read this part before, so I'm really curious to see what the Chavetz Chaim himself says. Most of the other stuff I'm familiar that we've been going through, familiar with it. I've given you lots of extra topics on it. This one I've never had to really gone in depth. So let's share this moment together. Okay, so what are we? So the topic of this chapter is, even though someone who has been terrible at guarding his tongue, right? He says Lashon Hara all the time, and he's been doing it for most of his life. Even though he's done that, he can still improve himself for the rest of his days, right? Right. So let's see what he has to say. So he says, one should further know that even if you have not been careful with your mouth and with your tongue for a time or a long time, okay? Or from time to time, or on a regular basis. If the word is interesting, it's idan ve'idanim, which is times and many times. It says, nonetheless, a person should strengthen oneself for what is to come, or the life that they expect for them for the rest of the days, okay? Because Hashem is going to provide you with a certain number of days, and you have some responsibilities during those days. And you shouldn't ruin them. So what's this comparable to? So someone who hires a person to do a job guarding something, okay? He hires him to guard, let's say his vineyard is the example the Chavetz Chaim gives, and the length of that job is to watch it all summer long. And the guardian, the shomer, he does a lousy job. He does something completely negligent in the course of this, and just doesn't show up for the job for a few months. And as a result, the vineyard gets trampled and worn down. Why? Because thieves broke in and they stole a ton of parts of the vine, and they stole whole parts of it or whatever it was. So the one thing is that, so you might think that the owner of this place, he's going to just give up on the vineyard in its entirety and allow the rest of it to be trampled. Do you think that that's what he would allow that to happen? No, the opposite's going to happen. He's going to say, I need more security. And I'm going to have to add more guardians to the guardians I've already hired, especially the ones who don't do their job, and fix the fence. Okay? And I personally am going to have to pay more attention to it in order that the rest of it doesn't get lost. So why not for Hashem as well? And we actually learn a similar idea in Mishlei. This is in chapter 24, verse 30, that I have passed upon the field of the lazy man, and I have passed across the vineyard of the person who has no heart in the game. And I see that in the field weeds have grown, and the entire surface of it are just covered with what's it called? And then it's covered with what are those things called? Basically, it's the long prickly branches. I don't remember the name of that. Long prickly branches and brambles, is, is what this word is referring to. I don't remember the name of that plant. and the fence of stone has been pushed over. So what does he say to continue there? The advice given in Mishlei is to do the following same thing, which is fix your fence, take out all of those weeds and brambles and stuff, and pay more attention, so that way it doesn't get worse, right? So that's what you do. So let's talk about our case now. How are you going to fix your life going forward? What you're going to do for yourself is you're going to set up some fences, okay? So you're going to stay away from people who are not good people, and you're not going to talk about other people's stuff, okay? And someone who is talking about you and is saying horrible, embarrassing, humiliating things about you and is cursing you, try to make it up to them, okay? And be even more careful through the rest of the days of your life to say better things. That you should only say things that should be holy things and Torah-related things. Okay, I mean, of course, except for business-related things, you can always talk about business-related things. He puts that in parentheses. And you could say about yourself, hey, the later periods of life are, in a sense, an atonement for my younger life. So that, boys and girls, is chapter 24. So the idea is, in this chapter, is to say to you that it doesn't matter how bad it's been, there's always room for improvement. So it's funny that he talks about this in terms of Lashon Hara. I'm now speaking outside, and then we'll get to chapter 25, because I promised that we would do that as well. So the idea is that it's never too late to change, and this is interesting time of year to talk about this, because right now we're in the middle of Parsha Shmos and Va'era and Beshalach, and so in all of these parshios we see situations whereby people seem to not change. We see Paro doesn't change, Egyptians don't change, nobody wants to change. That's not the theme of the Torah, and in fact, most of the Rishonim talk about they sort of defend. They sort of defend the legal action taken against Paro, that he deserved it and so on and so forth. The Abravanel sort of takes affront at what are a person's rights under sort of universal law of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu meets out things. A person should have the opportunity to do tshuva. He says this is a major theme. A person should always have the opportunity to do tshuva. And even though the Chafetz Chaim doesn't talk about that in this chapter, he's coming at it from a different approach. It's not so much that you need to do tshuva, right? You do need to do tshuva. But the idea is that, let's say you do that, you need to be better going forward. Just like the owner of the vineyard, right? You've done a terrible job with it. You haven't treated it right, and it's not doing for you what we expect to do for you. Do better for it, and it will do better for you. So if you do better with your life will become a better life. That's the message of this chapter. Okay. Next chapter, chapter 25, Tarus Hamachashava, purifying your thought processes. I'm kind of, getting a little excited over here about the last couple chapters. These are really interesting ideas to talk about. So let's talk about purifying your thoughts. So for the long time, we've been talking about that part of you that actually does the talking, the Chafetz Chaim says. Okay? What's the basis of speech? Okay? Because that's really the number one thing, is how I use the process of speech. Because a person will pay attention to that, and and they're not just some other creature, but a person would pay attention to it. Okay? Just the way that it's structured in the pasuk. So he says, if you look at the sort of the end of the Torah in Devarim chapter 30 verse 14, he says, because this matter is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. Okay, so that's what it means. That's why we start in those places. Now I want to talk about the Chafetz Chaim saying is that part of you that is in the heart. Okay, so we've been talking about the laws about talking. Now let's talk about the laws about the thinking. Okay, so a person needs to think about the way that the pasuk thinks about it, because it says it's in your heart as well to do it. So what does that mean? So there's another similar verse in Tehillim, in Tehillim number 24. So in that Tehillim, we say it when we put the Torah away during the week. Mi ya'aleh b'har Hashem, right? Who may ascend to the mountain of God, right? The base of Mikdash, the Har HaBayis. Naki kapayim, right? The hands are clean. So that's, the Chofetz Chaim says, is by what a person does to keep their hands clean, meaning they don't steal. Okay. Uvar levav, and a cleansed heart. So we see from this verse that's not only the useless things that are being done, but we say every single day, and this is in the brachos of before Shema, Yached levaveinu liyahava uliyira es shemecha. We combine our hearts to love and to fear your name, below nevosh le'olam, and we will never be embarrassed by this conduct. What this means, on a very basic level, he says, is that inside of every Jewish heart is the following thing on a regular basis. Believing that Hashem is the master of the heavens and the master of our teachings, the ones who has given us these teachings. This is the source of holiness. And this is further hinted at in the verse when it says, I am Hashem who dwells within the Jewish people. It's being literal. I am in your heart, he's saying. And we are asking Hashem for this as well. The Holy One, blessed be he. That he focus our hearts for his love and his awesomeness of his name. And we shouldn't mix any kind of love for anything else in there. Because if you have these competing feelings in your heart, then you're going to start thinking about these different feelings in this spot. So what's going to happen is you're going to have this other feeling that's going to be planted in there that are things that are investitures in the nonsensical things of our world. And a person should be eternally embarrassed about switching those things that are eternally valuable to things that are silly and passing. And a person should really that. And you should know that the investments of a person's time, whether it's the time, the things that he's doing, or the things that he's considering, everything gets processed up above before Hashem. And we say this statement in all clarity on Rosh Hashanah. Right? For the mention of every created thing comes before you. Ma'isa ish v'sach bulosav, machshavos adam, v'sach bulosav. Everything that person does, their thoughts, their investments, their inventions, everything is organized there, and it comes before you and before them. And this is echoed further into Tehillim when it says, "I will prove to you and arrange it for you before your very eyes." And a person should be embarrassed about the things that will be shown to him in the world to come. What is this like? To a certain very powerful individual. Okay, I think he says the word gevir. So the gevir in this, usually gevir means that someone who's very strong. It means a very influential person, right? So here, this person, what does his influence come from? He sells expensive jewels, right? And he leaves his house, and he looks at one of the places. He looks at one of his close trusted people to keep in charge of the stuff that he has, keep in charge of his stuff. And he gives him permission to also check out all the nice stones. Okay, see how nice they are, to open the safe where they're kept, and they can check them out, and he also is going to see, in that same chest there is a big pile of schmutz, a pile of dirt. Okay, this is work with the story over here. Okay, so he takes you. So you're the friend. You come in, you see lots of nice stones, and then all of a sudden next to that, dirt. Okay, dirt. So what's the person going to think? So this crazy person has got to be crazy. right? This wealthy person's got to be crazy. How could you leave dirt with stones? And why are they in the same container? So here's what you should learn from this, because this should be understood. I mean that all the wonderful, valuable things that are in this world eventually turn to dust, and from it itself, and from everything that you wish that you have in this world, we say that what eventually happens to it. Well, we learn about this in HaLashon in the 3rd chapter. Everything comes from dust, and everything returns to dust. And a person should really wonder about themselves, what their long-term choices are. How could they put the same value, meaning a metaphysical value, things that they consider to themselves, that these two things could be important, important drives in themselves at the same time. To love Hashem and His Torah, which is the nice stones, the valuable stones we see there that are more valuable than gold and fine silver, and to love the dirt, the thing of dirt, right? Because we don't know how long those things are going to last, because at the end, everything is finite and gets ruined. And so therefore, a person needs to be very, very careful that he doesn't mix up his thoughts to think that things that are fleeting are just as valuable as those things that are eternal. And that's why we say, focus our heart, and we should never be embarrassed about these things. And that's why we say in the Shema as well, love Hashem with all your heart. And that's how we purify those senses. So this wasn't a very long class today, but it's a lot to consider and a lot to think about. I don't want to overlap too many thought processes. There's a lot to consider in this section. So we will leave it there. We have 4 more chapters left before we conclude the book. And again, they're not very long, but there's a lot to think about, and so a lot to consider. So consider, how you can make improvements on yourself, review some of the material, think about the ideas that we've discussed. If it's too much for you, run it through AI to summarize it. I should probably even do that myself. And think of ways in which life can be made better. Thank you for joining us in today's class. We will see you next time.